You're riding down the highway, enjoying a beautiful day in Iowa, when your bike hits a pothole, and before you know it, you're sliding across the cement pavement at 55 miles per hour while your body takes a beating. There's no car responsible on the other end, just a poorly repaired road that the government should have fixed years ago. Now you're stuck with broken bones and giant medical bills to pay. So what can you do? Can you sue the government? Can you sue the king? It's, an overarching question that we get time and time again. People come to us and they're like,
We hit a pothole, we hit something in the road. What can we do? Who do we sue? How do we sue them? What do we do? Because we have all of these medical bills and we're very injured, we're banged up.
so what's the answer to that typically?
The sad truth is, if it's a road that the county or the state is responsible for, or a city, if it's a road condition that a governmental entity in Iowa is responsible for, the answer is almost always, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. The government is immune from being sued for damages in almost all situations that involve dangerous roadway conditions.
And if I'm remembering correctly, this falls under something called Public Duty Doctrine. And there was a case about it in 2020, Breese versus the city of Burlington. And it essentially said that if a duty is owed to the public generally, then there is no liability to an individual member of that group. And that was how they have based the standard. And that standard started with Johnson v. Humboldt County in 2018. So public duty doctrine, from what I understand, is all about determining whether the government owes an enforceable duty to you as an individual. There's two different iterations, right? There's misfeasance and there's nonfeasance. So for nonfeasance, we'd be looking at the classic, you hit a pothole. Because the government failed to do anything, they fall under this category of nonfeasance, which means they're not responsible for fixing that pothole, and their failure to do any of that upkeep, not their problem at all. Now, misfeasance is one of those weird spots where if they tried to fix it, but they did so terribly, then there's possibly an end. Am I correct in that?
Anytime you're dealing with a dangerous condition on a road that causes a crash, almost 99 times out of 100, you're not going to have a claim if it's the government that's responsible. There are rare exceptions, and it's always going to be worth checking with a lawyer to see if there's an exception that applies. But the general rule that almost always applies is if the government is responsible for the roadway, you're not going to have a claim to the extent that something about the roadway caused you to crash.
Fair. So from what I understand, in those exceptions, the only one that really exists, the only scenario where you can actually sue the king is when the king's employees negligently try to fix or improve on existing infrastructure and they do it terribly. That's basically the only time you get through that public duty doctrine and you manage to navigate around it, is if they hire somebody to fix that pothole, and let's say they plant a tree instead of filling it in correctly. That's where we get to that misfeasance versus nonfeasance. Is that correct?
If they've attempted to do something and they do a terrible job of it, maybe even make it worse, then that may be one of the exceptions that you're talking about. But again, in Iowa, I'm asked to look at these types of questions over and over and over again over a lot of years. And my conclusion almost always is there is no claim if it's the government that was responsible.
We've talked about what happens if the government fails to correct this issue, What if it's not the government, though, that's supposed to be correcting that issue? What if it's a private corporation?
See, this is where when somebody comes to us with a dangerous roadway condition, this is where I'm crossing my fingers that the county farmed this out to a private company, and it's the fault of the private company that the road's in this kind of a condition. Because if it's a private company, then all the rules are changed. There is no special protection like there is for governmental entities. You said earlier you can't sue the king. That's true. The king is the government. But if it's a private company, now it's just down to simple negligence. If the private company was negligent in something about the way the roadway was designed or maintained, now you've got a claim.
It's infuriating, we know. It's legal immunity for our government's failure to fix problems they damn well should have. Failure that leads to people being injured or even killed. Is it fair? That's up for debate. Is it like this in every state? No. This is how it is in Iowa, though. So if you're in a crash and it wasn't your fault, whether it was a pothole or another driver, call us to see how we can help. You may not be able to sue the king for the pothole, but you can damn sure sue the insurance company and hold them accountable if there was another driver at fault. Call for your free consultation. and let us ride the road to recovery with you. Now that you know how the government covers their ass, click here to learn how big insurance tries to throw you out on yours.